Hello and welcome to Data Conversations over Coffee with myself, Craig Stewart. I'm properly rugged up. It's only about 3 degrees here in Johannesburg. Just before we came on air, I was saying to my guest, Anwar, it's probably our coldest winter in the last 6 or 7 years. Anwar is, how can we put this, one of Carinium's longtime supporters, a really good friend of the business, has spoken in a lot of our regions. I've spent a lot of time with him in Cape Town, in Cairo, which was particularly memorable over the past couple of years. Anwar is a data strategy and governance expert at FedEx Express, and just actually a generally nice guy and someone who is so knowledgeable about data management, data governance, data strategy, you name it, anything with data, Anwar knows it. And as maybe you can guess from the records sitting behind him, Anwar is massively into music, and not a lot of people know that he's a very accomplished DJ as well, from back in the day. So Anwar, thank you so much for joining me in this virtual environment. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Cool. So maybe Anwar, give the listeners, I think a lot of people in South Africa, have interacted with you through our conferences, and through some of the content and sort of our global audience as well. But maybe just a brief introduction into your role, what it is that you do, and then we can kick off and start to understand a bit more around data strategy and data governance.
I think, well, thanks. I think the key thing is having a background that's different to data or IT. My background is in finance, and for many years, that's where I've been focused, coming from management accounting, trade receivables, working capital management type area, moving into the back office, implementing SAP. Having that sort of focus, but also general background is really important, because having done some of that type of work, only then you realize the importance of data and the outcomes of treating it and using it in the right way. And for me, I think everybody who I speak to, it doesn't matter about the region or the company that they come from, their backgrounds are so important, because they bring that different perspective every single time that I speak to them, whether it be a sales perspective or an operational perspective or manufacturing, it doesn't really matter. The fact that they bring that slightly different delta into the game each time makes me think about not only the way I deploy the practice of data management, but also the way I teach it as well. So,
yeah. And I think that's what I've found over the last couple of months, is that there are people moving in from different areas of the business into a data management role, because they've been working with that part of the company's data. They understand the importance of data quality to the outcome or the insight that they actually get from that.
Yeah, and getting those fundamentals absolutely right is so important, and I think we ought to encourage that. And some of the larger institutions and organizations around the world do that very, very well, and we should follow and adopt their methodologies, because it's all too often, it's like a rabbit and a tortoise type race, where you will have in every company one senior manager wanting to go at the speed of lightning, and somebody else saying, no, let's get the basics right. And finding that balance in between is so important. And it's important to realize it's not just one race. It's a pentathlete. There's so many things that you have to do, and so many different disciplines that you have to cover. And wherever I go, and I was in South Africa just before lockdown, as you may recall, wherever I go, it's so important to make sure that we get this right for the company that is in or trying to address the data issue.
Yeah, let's maybe touch on that. I mean, as you said, you were in Cape Town for DataCon Africa, middle of March, potentially the last physical conference that ran in South Africa, definitely in the convention center in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And I think the people that then attended your data governance masterclass can count themselves extremely lucky that they got to attend. And we had a really good audience. I mean, we were kind of stressed a little bit before that, the sort of thoughts of COVID, etc., would, stop people from coming. But we were packed out. I mean, it's always a great thing from a conference organizer's perspective to have to rush more chairs into a room when something starts. So maybe you can give us a bit of detail into the masterclass that you run online, especially around how companies can go about building, a sound data strategy that's based on, data management principles, but also it ties into the corporate strategy of the organization that they work.
I think that sentence is the key one. You don't just build a data strategy. You build a data strategy around the corporate strategy, whatever that strategy may be, as well as the business imperatives that every company has. Every company wants to win and keep profitable customers, or have safe working environments, or make money even. Those are basic business imperatives. But the strategy, i.e. the multiple projects that get initiated by leadership to head the company into the new direction or the existing one in a better way, it's being able to tie into that. And I think it's so important that every data management professional realizes they're not going to walk into a company or be given huge, endless buckets of money. They have to support the business strategy, and being able to support a company in their digital efforts, or whatever the current flavor of the month is. We have to be able to deliver that, inverted commas, strategic project on top of the business as usual, on top of adopting new technologies and new processes, as well as building strong data foundations, because quite often companies have glossed over those in the last 20 to 30 years. So being able to juggle those 4 or 5 things is really important. And I think for companies large and small, finding that balance is important.
Yeah. And maybe if you can, I think there seems to be, and I know it's getting better from the conversations that I've had, and I'm sure you see the same, that sort of tying the data strategy into the overall corporate strategy is getting a lot better. People have realized that it's effectively one and the same. I mean, one enables the other. But I still think that there's organizations that realize that, but they struggle to almost match it. What are some of the disconnects that you've seen or have come across that people should be mindful of when they're trying to put together the two strategies?
I think it's about language for me. You have the C-suite, they talk about progress and value delivery. Of course they should. Senior business management usually talk about the function that they're in, whether that be finance or sales, and process improvement and things like that. IT come along and talk about scalability, resilience, etc. And of course, there's a new language on the block as well, which is the data language. So being able to talk 4 different languages in one conversation is key. And I think we shouldn't go into, for example, a boardroom and start talking about business rules and MDM and glossaries. We ought to be talking about the value that they will deliver, rather than what we're actually trying to do. And the problems that we face in trying to do those. And I think that message is the key. And we have to have 3 or 4 different versions of the same message. So one PowerPoint presentation that you deliver to the board, that doesn't mean you should give the same one to the masses or to the middle management. We have to tailor that message each time, because everybody speaks a different language. And I think being able to make sure that we do that in a very articulate and concise manner is the key.
Yeah. I mean, I put a lot of emphasis this year on data literacy across organizations. And I think people are doing a really good job. And it is sort of a buzz sort of phrase at the moment. But what about business literacy? Do you find data management professionals have that, business literacy? They're able to actually take it from, data terms and translate it into business language that the C-suite will understand, your marketing team, sales teams, ops teams, etc. Or does there still need to be that sort of link between, like a data translator?
Yeah, it's a two-way street. You have to be able to do that translation in both directions for it to be effective. But literacy is a subject, as you know, that's really dear to my heart. And I think companies undertaking a data literacy initiative, it's not for the faint-hearted. This is not something that's easy. It's not one or two courses that you're going to put together and slap them on your learning and development platform. It is a structured program that helps professionals grow and learn, of course, and be able to apply those skills in the business. And it's a combination of in-house content as well as external content, because a lot of the stuff you can buy from commercial organizations, typically things like data architecture, there's hundreds and hundreds of courses available out there, and some of them are very, very good. Being able to then translate that into the company's initiatives and the software of choice that they have, that's, I think, the turning point for literacy in the data space. And finally, business literacy is then being able to take that data literacy and apply it into those business terms.
There's a lot of moving parts there, and there's business literacy, there's the technology literacy, I guess, as well, the data literacy, good quality data, corporate strategy, etc. There's a lot of ingredients that need to go into the pot to make something truly successful or become a successful data-driven business.
Yeah.
Well,
not every company wants to be data-driven. You may want to be data-centric or data-informed. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that there is a need for literacy in the organization. Everybody in the organization needs to know their roles and deliverables and their responsibilities in the data space. If they handle data, let's face it, everybody does these days, more or less. So we have to educate them and make them aware of what those responsibilities are. And as for the moving parts, from some of the presentations I gave in South Africa, I broke it down into sort of 9 different areas. And I think there's a lot of interest as to some of those areas for some companies and other areas for other companies. So a lot of companies were keen to outsource some of this capability, and they realized, okay, there is gaps in the market for data literacy. So they would have to develop some of that content themselves, or being able to partner with other organizations that are in the same space. This is critical, and this is where Corinium and organizations like yourselves really come into it, because having these platforms, online webinars and forums and physical ones when they were allowed, is so important, because we sat down in South Africa with a group about 10 people, and after half an hour, from having come from the point where they realized, oh, I've got 7 different problems, they realized there was one root cause, and that they could work together on that root cause without giving the game away, of course, in terms of company policies. I think it's that sort of collaboration that's going to help us come out of this. Because let's face it, every company has this problem.
Yeah.
Right. And being able to structurally address it is expensive. And if you do not collaborate and you do not go externally, you're going to waste a lot of time and money and internal effort. And that's effort that we have, we can't afford to waste.
Mm. And do you find, I mean, from that perspective, companies are open to sort of sharing these ideas? Obviously, they can't share data. There's a lot of privacy protection, so things, even if it's anonymized, all these sort of things. But are people open to that sort of conversation? I mean, obviously, from us, we have round tables. People open up, but really to actually collaborate in a proper business environment.
There's 2 aspects to this. You rightly pointed them out. One is collaborating on concepts and how to deal with them. And that is where everybody can work together, because you're not giving anything away. As for sharing data, there are organizations that specialize in this. It's something that you really ought to be quite mature in your data journey in order to take that step, I think. And I think a lot of companies are reluctant to do it in the first instance, simply because of the issue of you know, the interest of your own organization. You don't want to just go and give away the crown jewels. However, there is value to be had when we better society by sharing data. And a lot of companies are doing this in many different areas, such as postcodes and things like this. So they do share some data that is readily available. And I think making sure that you are really clear on what the objectives are when you share information or concepts, that's, I think, something that's important to do.
Mm. All right, good. I wanted to just move on a little bit, just to get your experience of where South Africa is in terms of its data maturity. Now, obviously, every organization is different, but maybe if we can think about it sort of as a collective. And our audience is global, but I think, you know, majority is from South Africa. So, you know, people often ask me, how do we compare as South Africa in terms of the maturity of our data versus the rest of the world that Corinium works in? So UK, US, etc. And I always say, you look, yeah, maybe as a whole, we're a little bit far behind, but there's pockets of sophistication and excellence in South Africa. Certain companies are doing things really well. And across Europe, the US, etc., there's organizations that are maybe really large, but are still quite far behind. So from your perspective, having been involved in so many of our events globally, how would you kind of summarize that, or sort of, you know, put that into words of, you know, where we are as the country and our data maturity versus everyone else? Very long-winded question, but
no, it's not long-winded. I think you've answered your own question. It's no different anywhere else, Craig, at all. I think a lot of companies hide behind their corporate brand, their well-known, recognized companies, and they do not want to expose weaknesses in the woodwork, so to speak. And like every company, there are pockets of excellence and pockets of weakness, some areas where we are just way behind the curve. And that then translates into the country itself. I think comparing a Western European country to somewhere from APAC to South Africa to North America, etc., it's not going to be much different, Craig. And I think the thing is this, what we need to do, and companies like yourself do very well, is promote the good. And I think being able to spark interest and give a helping hand to companies that struggle, this is something that is our, you know, I think our corporate responsibility, even to make sure that we do not just leave everybody behind. You know, it being a company or an organization that wants to work in the Internet of Things and in the future e-commerce world, we have to have a certain degree of common capability and practice and standards, and promoting those is important for ourselves. So giving that nurturing to companies that struggle, working alongside of companies that are mature to make sure that we have a common standard and adopt best practice so that we can interact together, is something that I think we should all be trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm always amazed by how similar the challenges are across different organizations, different industries, different countries. You know, I can have a virtual panel discussion or round table with people from Dubai, Egypt, South Africa, East, West Africa. And you'd imagine that could be quite different in terms of where they're at. But I always say that when it comes down to the strategic challenges that organizations face with their data analytics, it's pretty small in terms of the number of real challenges that companies have got. I mean, they're big challenges, but there's not 1,000 different challenges. There's maybe 4 or 5 really big things that most organizations face.
And those are the ones, of course, that we all need to start on. And whether it be an industry vertical that you're looking at, the banking and telecom sectors, for example, those guys are obviously highly regulated, and they need to achieve those standards. Those standards are no different in South Africa than they are in the UK or in France. So I think being able to, and in fact, some of those have to be the same. Some of those standards that we work towards. So I think the challenges per se are not that different as you've said yourself, but I think the way and the pace and the investment that we give and bring to them is of course different according to the country, the GDP of that country, and the culture of the organizations involved. I think all of these, when you put them into the pot, you're right, it's not that different. However, it's a challenge that needs to be addressed and it needs to be done consistently. And hence it comes back to this collaboration word and being able to work across industry, across organization to achieve those standards. I think that's where we need to be at.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter about the investment we put into it. Giving effort and contributing to the thought process is quite often a big enough challenge as it is.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Anwar, thanks. We've covered a lot of ground, but and this may be a little bit repetitive towards the end, but maybe if we could distill into Anwar's top 3 tips for building a data strategy or sound data management for the audience.
I think I'm going to start with the back end of things. Being able to, when you start to deliver some of your data management capabilities, being able to scale that up is one of the most important things. Organizations that are multinational corporations, those guys need to be able to repeat consistently some of that data process and capability to a massive scale. I mean, I'm not talking just 1 or 2 times a day. I mean, thousands of times a day, we need to be able to do the same thing. So scalability, consistency is really important. So for me, that's the first thing. The second thing is that in itself then requires you to automate some of these processes. And having a data management strategy, which has lots of data processes and governed data services underneath them, those need to be able to be automated in order to give that scale. And I think the thing that I would put down is being able to define and articulate these processes on paper very, very clearly so that it is auditable, repeatable, shareable. We have organizations that turn around people quite rapidly. So we need to be able to do this in that way. So those are the 3 things that I think are so important in order for us to be able to deliver data strategies that tie into business strategies. We're able to scale them up, repeat them faster and faster each time, so that we can do some of the things like apply machine learning to them. And this is key to what we're doing at a multinational level.
Yeah, perfect. All right, great. Those were brilliant tips, and I'll make sure to sort of post them into the description of the episode as well, just for reference. Anwar, thanks so much for joining me. Before I let you go, as is customary on the show, I've already downed my cup of coffee this morning, probably because I was cold, but maybe you can give us a little bit of insight into your relationship with coffee.
There isn't one. This is something that obviously I'm from an Asian background. We're tea drinkers in our family. So any strong black tea with milk, a little bit of sugar, that's the key for me. And if I don't have one every morning, I'm probably as grumpy as you are.
It's not the first time I've been referred to as grumpy, so I think I'll need to switch to the strong, sweet tea. Awesome, Anwar. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure to chat to you. And hopefully we'll see each other again soon.
Indeed.
Physically at another event, but for now, we'll keep it digital.
Thanks very much.
Great. Good to have you on.
Cheerio.